Coming live from Virginia, USA is our guest tonight. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Sonja Keeve, master podcast coach, author, motivational speaker, and there is so much to learn from her. Welcome to the show, Sonja.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ. It's an honor to be here.
You are welcome. You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India. And we'll be talking about, but your message will reverberate around the globe because this podcast goes to a lot of places. And I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from your insights into the topic, how to reinvent yourself after 40. So, Sonja, just to understand, people are born with their voice, but you found your voice again with podcasting and you reinvented yourself. Tell us how you got into podcasting, and now you are a master podcast coach. And along the way, you have found your voice. You are helping others find their true voice, especially beyond when they are after 40.
Absolutely loving the story. My indication of getting into investing really happened after a corporate layoff. I was working in a financial institution and company for about 5 years, and thinking that I was going to elevate to get to my next level in the C-suite. In fact, I end up getting a pink slip. And for most people who've ever been laid off from a job, it is one of the most devastating things that can happen to you. And so I took that moment. I had two choices. I could have chosen to give up, or I could have chosen to get up. And I decided to get up and figure out how I could create something that was solely mine, that no one else had any control over, where I could truly find my voice, where I could speak and really share the things that were passionate to me. And so through a social media challenge, at the time I was an aspiring entrepreneur. So I was really trying to find my lane. And so I decided to do a podcast because someone had talked to me about it. And really only introduction to podcasting was listening to true crime podcast shows. And I really liked the flow of the show. I really liked how the feel of the show was. And so I decided, well, I wanted to create a podcast show where I could interview incredible women around the world, because as a woman working in corporate America, many times we were told to just, not speak up, to, just be behind the scenes. But many of us have so many gifts and talents that really needed to be showcased. And so I wanted to create a platform where I could invite women to share their stories of how they inspire others every single day. And on March the 10th of 2018, I launched Inspiring Nations with 50 women said yes to being on the show. And I just simply asked the question, if I start a podcast, would you be my guest? And 50 women said yes to being a guest on my show. And 3 months into that show, we launched it and were heard across the United States and 3 countries. By July of 2018, I had sold out all of my guests for that year. I ended up partnering in 2019 with a company, a Broadcast Radio and Talk LLP, and they took Inspiring Nations to over 164 plus countries. And we are in season 5 of Inspiring Nations, and we're still inspiring women and men all around the globe. And it is a place that has really helped solidify me finding my voice, but more importantly, giving a platform and a table to those who don't know their voice. And now they're finding it by being a guest on my show.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sonja. And now you see, you wanted to become an entrepreneur. And now you are the
Yes.
CEO of Sisters with a Voice podcast network. That's,
Yes.
you have achieved your dream of entrepreneurship. You have found your voice, and now you are helping women entrepreneurs get unstuck from thinking about a podcast to building, launching, and monetizing a podcast, that too in 30 days. That's wonderful. Not only now the focus has shifted just from yourself, but now you are doing the greater good and you are helping others. But Sonja, you, when we talk about somebody who is beyond 40, or just they are, they start looking at life very differently. You looked at your losing your job in a very different manner, much more positively, and and you have built a life for yourself. It is not an easy journey. I can tell you, even though it may sound to some, or you may look at make it look easy, but it is not. And I tell you, it's a great inspiration that you have come to this level. But why about podcasting? Because it's, you talk about finding your purpose. uh, how does a person who is just moving into the 40s or early 40s, and suddenly whatever happens, or even if suddenly everything is going all right, how do they know they are actually aligned with their purpose? So how did you find yours? What made you decide to go full fledged into this? How do people find their own purpose? Obviously everybody cannot go into podcasting. Perhaps podcasting is not for everybody. What would you like to tell about this whole concept, so that people can understand your story better, as well as implement the same learnings to make their stories better?
Absolutely. So that was a loaded question. So I'm going to break down and peel some of the concepts. So when you, for those that are 40 and older, perhaps there's something that you are naturally gifted in. Always start from your place of your why. What is that thing that you naturally do so well that you don't even think about it? That's always a good place to start with, really figuring out, what is my second act in life? As you say, Jay, losing my job was something that was easy, and shift from going from corporate America to building my business, it took a process and it took some time. It took some soul searching for me. I am a faith based woman, and I believe in God. And part of my journey was really going into prayer and just really asking God, what is that thing that you have called me to do? So I took all of the skill sets that I had learned in corporate America, with being able to effectively communicate, being able to build teams, being able to create processes and strategy. And I took all of those skill sets, and I honed that in with launching my own podcast show. Like, no one helped me to launch it. I did some research YouTube, like how to start a podcast. And then I took what I knew and I built the show. And so when I built the show, I really had some questions I had to kind of ask myself. What was the goal going to be for the show? What was going to be the purpose of why I was starting this podcast? Because when I came into the game in 2018, there were already 550,000 podcast shows out there. So I had to figure out what was going to be my unique selling proposition for entering the market, because everybody was really launching a podcast show. So I had to figure out what was going to be different about Inspiring Nations. And so I started with the premise of, it has the word inspiration. And so I knew I wanted it to be inspirational in nature. But I also understood that people who consume podcasts on the daily, they're looking for either inspiration, they're looking for education, they're looking for tips, they're looking for resources, they're looking for how can they change their situation and make it better. And so they consume podcasts that can help them to do that. So when I started interviewing women and they had different stories, I recognized that at some point in your life, you're going to experience setbacks, you're going to experience victories. And so it's like in the moment of the setback, what is it that you can do to live the life that you desire? And so I wanted to create a legacy for my family. The whole reason why I wanted to have my own business, I wanted to be able to schedule my own time. I wanted to be able to create the kind of life that I could be proud of, not taking any away from those who currently work in the corporate America space. But I knew that I was destined for more, that I was positioned here to be able to be a man for other women. And so I purposely really targeted other women that wanted to have a play their story. And so I really craft of being to be a podcaster, because many times people will start a podcast and they don't really have a purpose, target. A podcast to create an intimate with those that are tuning in to hear your show, and so your ideal list either solve their biggest problem or help them to pursue their biggest passion. I find that you have raving fans for life. And so the success of the show is based upon understanding who my audience is, what the goal of the show is going to be, like what I want my listeners to walk away with as they listen to the show. And then most importantly, what can I share that can help them take that very next best step? And that helped me to create the foundation for the business that I have today.
Right, right, Sonja. Now, you learned everything yourself. Did the research, did everything. Not everybody, even in the early 40s, even a lot of people in their 30s find this whole gamut of social media, learning about technology. Everything is changing so fast in today's time that people are a bit wary of trying to
Yes.
get into this. How about your mind? Because getting into podcasting is different. I love the name of your podcast, Inspiring Nations with Sonja Keeve. So you had to think about that, about the name and all. But beyond then, how do you reach out to people in terms of social media? How do you spread that word? How do you get guests on a continuous basis? How did this work for you? The whole idea is to because a lot of people have that mental barrier, especially people in their 40s, not to be bit fearful that I'll not be able to learn new things at this point in time. Your message, your inspiring story will help them understand this part of life better.
Yep. So after you come up with your show title, and I always tell people your show title should be something that is catchy, and it catchy to the point where it bakes them to want to know more. So like you hear inspiring nations, just in the word inspiring, you're thinking, well, this should be an inspirational style type of podcast. So once you kind of have that title for your show, you've got to decide now, are you ready to start off as a solo style podcaster? Or do you want to have a co hosted style type of podcast? Do you want to have an interview style type of podcast? So there's different ways that you can start out when you first launch your show. So many people start off as a solo style podcaster. And so as a solo style podcaster, you're going to be the person that's going to create that content. So always starting with the end goal in mind, what's going to be the goal of the show? The content that you're going to create is going to help secure the goal for the show. Now, if you decide you want to interview people like I do on my show, I do have a process. So I market the show. So I put out there on social media, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever your audience lives. And you first let them know that you have a show. That, a lot of podcasters don't do that. They launch the show, but they don't tell anybody about it. So you tell
Right.
people that you have this podcast show and you give them a snippet of what the show is going to be about. And then you do a casting call. And if you're looking for guests, say, I'm looking for guests. And I have a process where I get them on the phone or I'll do a Zoom call because like we live in a virtual space. And, and I find out a little bit more about who they are. Like, I mean, I can read anybody's bios with all of their accolades, but I want to know who they are as a person, who are at their core. See if there is an alignment. Will this person be a good guest for my show? Because my audience is whom I protect the most. So I don't want just everybody and anybody coming on the show. I want people that can really help my audience. And so I will look to see, will this guest be in an alignment? And then if they are, then I do a little a research behind them. Like I'll look at their social media profiles. I want to know beyond your business. What do you do in your everyday life? Are you a family person? Are you single, married, divorced? What do you do outside of your business? Because that's what people connect to. People connect to your authenticity and your vulnerability. So I want to know, if you've had a setback, how did what did you do for that comeback? Like, did you let it, deteriorate, create your destiny? Those are the kinds of things that I look for. And so once I get that guest on the show, then I'm having a conversation with them to let them know about the flow of the show, how it's going to go. And then I will ask them at the end of every interview, how did that make you feel? Because there's an experience you want to evoke when interviewing people on a podcast, because it is an experience. And so I want to know, were you comfortable? How did you feel comfortable to share the things that you did? And when they tell me that this was a great experience, that, I had a great time on your show, I'll ask for the referral. Well, if you know somebody you think would be great for the show, send them the their information to me so that I can reach out to them. And then I will ask them, would you mind sharing this episode on all of your social media platforms? So that gives you a whole new audience of people that you can connect with, that will be introduced to you as the podcast host. So that gives the opportunity. So now people will reach out to me and say, hey, I listened to your latest episode and I was really inspired by it, and I think I would be a great guest for your show. But I was very clear before I launched exactly what I wanted the show to be. And when you're clear on your purpose, then everything else kind of falls in place. And so now when I started in 2018, I remember after the 50 women that I interviewed, those 50 women told their friends. And so it just became a snowball effect where I didn't have to reach out and find guests. People wanted to come onto the show, one, because of how I make my guests feel. Like I make you feel like you are a part of my family, because once you're a guest, I tell everybody you're now family. And so they want to come on the show and they share with others. So I am constantly always talking about the show, whether it's my podcast show, or whether I'm speaking on stages, or whether I'm networking. I'm always advertising about the podcast. And that's the thing. You have to be consistent. You have to be clear on your objectives, and you have to be committed to the process. And if you can be clear in all three of those areas, you will have a show that will outlast time.
Right, right. And how do you master the social media part of it, Sonja? Because it's not easy. Even a lot of people who dabble in social media all the time find it
Yeah.
difficult to continue with that day in and day out. Because for the podcast, you need to know about so many platforms. How did you master these?
Well, I always say, first of all, identify which platform your audience, your audience in. Facebook, Instagram, start with Instagram. first so you can build an audience. Because if you, like, I'm talking to people who have not, who are starting from scratch, like you don't have a following, you're starting from ground zero. So platform, and platform, and then master the platform, then you can add on Instagram or LinkedIn. Also, there are programs that allow you multiple places. So that's what I like to do. I like to maximize all of my platforms with minimal effort. And one of the ways to do that is you can use platforms like StreamYard, allows you to broadcast live like we are doing right here today, and it will broadcast on your other platforms that you serve all at the same time. Because I do believe in working smarter and not harder. So it's all about first, starting with one platform that you can master. Once you do that, maximize it to the fullest, and that's one of the ways I like StreamYard and multiple social media platforms.
Right, right, Sonja. In terms of challenges, what were the challenges that came to you? What are the challenges that people who, especially trying out new things after 40, they should be ready for?
Um, Really, when you're talking about reinventing yourself after 40, the biggest challenge is minimizing the fear and the doubt. Many times we can question, second guess ourselves, and always looking backward. I always say create moments in the present. Like, we can always dream for tomorrow, and we can sometimes always look back in our past, but it's about seizing the day. Like, if you are alive, well and breathing, use the present day to ask yourself, what can I do to maximize that this day be the best day of my life? Whatever that is, whatever you have been wanting to do in your life, first achieve that dream. Like, for me, it was starting the podcast. So I started with one thing, learning, how to create content. Then I learned, well, I need to have an intro for my show. So someone told me, well, you could go to Fiverr and, find an expert to do that. So I just always remained a student of learning. And the challenge can be, like you said in the beginning, is just that fear of, well, I'm not sure what I want to do, or I'm afraid that I won't be good at this one thing. Don't worry about that. Just do it. Even if it's scary, even if it's perfect. I mean, even if it's scary, even if it's not perfect, because many times we get into this, everything has to be perfect. Perfectionism, I tell people all the time, is not attainable. So it's about just taking that first step, and then taking a step forward every single day until you achieve your dreams. I'm a big believer in vision boards. If there's some places you want to travel, or a new skill set you want to pick up, put that on your vision board. Give yourself a goal. And then with goals, setting right goals, or smart, measurable, attainable, time bound. That's so important, because many times we can have all of these goals inside of our head, but we don't write them down. And if you don't ever put an end date of when you want to achieve them, you'll find yourself just sitting paralyzed and not moving forward. So I really think the challenge is getting over the fear, not putting so many expectations on you that it has to be perfect, and then just do it anyway.
Right, right, Sonja. Uh, in terms of a lot of entrepreneurs who come to you, who are the other people whom you help, so that people who are interested to know more about how want to work with you, they can connect with you. So first, tell us about your podcast, where they can get to listen to those, and as well as how do they connect with you so that they can do business with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, AJ. So you can actually check out Inspiring Nations wherever you listen to your podcast shows, whether that's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, or you can go to my website at sonjakeeve.com. That's SONJAKEE, V as in Victor E.com. You can listen to my podcast shows there. And if you are wanting to start a podcast, I work with women entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, ministers, thought leaders. If you have a voice, if you have an expertise, and you're really looking to take and grow and scale your business or even start a new business, I would love to sit down and connect with you. And if you go to my website at sonjakeeve.com, I'm offering free 15-minute consultation strategy sessions. And so let's get on the call and let's strategize so how I can help you to launch your next powerful podcast in just 30 days.
Next powerful podcast in just 30 days. Wonderful. My last question to you, Sonja, is to understand about life itself. Uh, when you started your business, you said, I learned two things that day. That your setback doesn't have to be where your story ends, and you can rewrite the narrative you want to tell. You are never too old to begin again. So, as the topic uh, of our discussion is, you know, what exactly was this realization about? What would you like to tell about? These are great words. Not everybody will understand it the way you have said it, but who better than to explain it yourself than you?
Right. If you're feeling like, you've missed the mark, I'm here to tell you, you haven't. If you are alive and well, that there's been a season in your life that you need to pursue. It's okay that you don't have all of the pieces in place, but just being able to take the first step is courageous enough. It's hard out here when you've experienced a setback. Believe me, I know. I am someone that I just was writing a post yesterday or the other day on social media acknowledging that I've experienced three corporate layoffs since 2015. And every layoff hit me very differently. And while most people probably would have given up on life, I recognize that I have family that's counting on me. I have friends that are counting on me. And most important, I have to count on myself. I can't wallow in what was. I can only pursue what is. And today is a day for me to be able to figure out how I can help inspire the next generation. And like AJ said in my bio, you might have had a setback. You might have had dreams that you thought about. Guess what? You're now 40 and older. Guess what? You get the opportunity to come back for the second act. And why not allow that second act to be filled with the life that you desired? Because you're never too old to begin again. Because, as one of my famous quotes that I love to recite by Wes Moore, and he says, I would rather flirt with failure than to never have danced in my joy. So don't let the setback be the thing that keeps you from living the purposeful life you were created to have. Set the goals, put the action steps in place on how you're going to get there, and just enjoy the journey along the way, because life is meant to be lived and not just to exist. So I hope that encourages you to take that next step. And like I said, if it's a podcast, I'm the girl that can help you get there in 30 days.
Absolutely. And what is it that you seek now, Sonja?
What I seek now, what do you mean?
You means, what do you want to achieve now in terms of, people who have their goals set in terms of, that this is what I will ideally want to do, what I would ideally want to be or achieve.
Yep. Yep. So really for my second act is I truly want to to help women to my goal help over 100,000 women to their own podcast shows, because as women we only represent 22% of all podcasters in the world, and it's time for us to change that narrative. So my goal is to make sure that in every household there is someone who is launching a podcast, table, inspiring nation.
Wonderful. Wonderful. On this note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.